Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Atomic Mass Transmissions Live. I'm Director of Product Development, Will Schick. There you go, Simone. I've messed up my title once more for your review and enjoyment. Hope you all are having a wonderful Wednesday afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are in the world. Today, I'm very excited. We're going to be working on the X-Wing Trident, which is the newest large ship, huge ship, I guess. We should put it in perspective. This thing is really big. I had to zoom out quite a bit to get it on camera, and I even didn't quite succeed based on my working area. But today we thought it would be fun with the upcoming release of the Trident and all of the good previews that John has been posting up, that we would take a moment and do a little bit of repainting on this. So let me get this camera off of me onto the star of our show, and let's start diving in because we've got a lot of work to do today. So as you can see here, it looks just like the Trident out of the box. So what's going on here? Very strange. Today I wanted to take a different approach. So a lot of our X-Wing repaint streams that we've done so far, at least I've done, I've reprimed the whole miniature and then I've restarted from scratch. Just given the size of this and how much I like the orange color, I decided today instead we'd have some fun and I'd show you how I would approach doing what I would call a touch-up or a revamp. So instead of doing the whole thing from scratch, we're just going to dive in. We're going to do some very specific areas, and we're going to take this miniature kind of to where I would consider the next level. We're going to do some personalization to it. For example, my goals here are we're going to change all these brown areas to like a really dingy, dirty gold. I want to take all of these gray areas that look like they should be metal, and I'm going to turn them into a metallic, which will kind of change the overall composition of the mini. And then I want to go in and I want to really amp up all of the glows. So I want this really cool canopy. I want to take all those. I want to amp up the yellow glow there. And then we have all of these really cool like glowing nodules on the tentacles, as you can see here. And I want to just take those and I want to make them look like they're actually glowing using what I know of painting miniature glow effects. So what I did to start is I simply took a clear artist matte sealant, basically. So you can use anything that you use to finish off your miniatures in terms of dull coating, matte coat, all of that good stuff. I took that, I sprayed the entire mini with it, and this is really important because while you can paint directly over the finished miniature, you won't get as good of results. So you really want to hit it with a matte sealant. If you're going to keep the original colors, this will give the paint some tooth, and it kind of acts as a clear primer layer. And so this is going to make everything that you do a lot easier. So to get things started, let's start with the golds. So I'm going to be using this decayed metal from scale 75. We're just going to start base coating all of those brown areas with this decayed metal. And my goal here again is just kind of like punch up what's there. We're not trying to go crazy. We're just going to personalize and change it a little bit. And I think adding these metallic elements instead of all flat colors will really give this mini a really great presence and pop. And the nice thing is because we're painting a really dark gold over a brown, we already have a really great base coat. So our coverage should go really quick and smooth, and that's going to be really nice too. Again, there's a lot to do on this mini, and we're going to do our best to keep it on camera, but oh my gosh, it's so big. Thankfully, I can move the little tentacles on this side if I need to get in there a little bit because they do wiggle. But this is something that you can definitely do on any of your X-Wing minis, and I know John last week did a pretty cool Sith infiltrator, there we go, tongue twister, where he kind of went in and he did a whole cloaking effect on it. And I think that color scheme was kind of unique to his design. It wasn't the out of the box color scheme, but of course you could take that approach and do it on your own Sith infiltrator. Also you could certainly dive right in and do something like I'm doing here. So we talk a lot about how X-Wing is such a great place to start learning the hobby and to really start exploring painting. You can do exactly what I'm doing here, which is I'm simply using the out-of-the-box paint as a guide. And that makes everything that I'm doing so much easier because I don't have to think about my color compositions. I can kind of just dial in. I know that anything that's dark brown, I want to turn into this gold. Because I'm going over this canopy, I can be a little sloppy if maybe not that sloppy, but that's all right. So we can just erase that little mistake away using a little damp brush. But again, I don't have to be perfect on this because I know which areas I'm going to go over again, which areas I'm not. And it's okay if a little bit of that brown shows up underneath, so we don't have to get perfect coverage on this pass. If I was doing something completely different, or let's say I was going to a silver and I needed to do a couple of base coats just to get that solid coverage, that would be fine too. But all of that stuff is very easy to accomplish and knock out. Okay, so we have that taken care of. Let's flip this thing over. Whoop. Do our best stand camera and start working on this stuff. All right. We might do the whole mini just so we can continue to move on to different parts. We might just do half of it, and then I'll finish up the other half later. But again, this beast, it's so big. Kind of at the max of my zoom out here. I'm a little afraid if I go too far, I won't really be able to see what I'm doing because we'll have to get so far away. So, but we did paint the last time on stream, which was last Friday. We got to do some vulture droids in squadron colors to kind of match the official paint scheme of the Trident, so we can use those in epic games or in other play where we're going to use the Trident and just have like that matching squad cohesion, so it'll look like the vulture droids are part of its battle group. I think that's really fun and cool. Those were, of course, complete repaints, so we did the whole primer over the top of the initial colors. Here, we get to keep our orange. We don't have to redo the orange. We could if we wanted to perfectly match, I suppose, but I think that this is going to work out just fine. So now I'm going to go into this engine block here, and I want this to be that same dirty gold. Just knock it out. And there is probably an argument that I could use a bit of a larger brush for some of these areas. I don't really have my terrain brushes nearby, and because I'm trying to be a little more cautious about overage spills and stuff like that, this size 3 brush is working pretty nicely for what I need. I'm not going to rush it. I'm just going to take my time and we're going to go from there. So, and then I know that John is planning, I think, on doing some solo play and showing off the solo AI mode or the co-op mode. I don't think you have to play solo, but one of the great things about having those AI controlled systems is that we do get to put in some solo play options. So you can 100% play solo, and I think he's going to show off that. I'm not sure if that's this week or next week, but I know he's been talking about wanting to put that on stream gameplay-wise. I'm looking forward to maybe doing some co-op play experiences on stream with this guy. So there's a lot of cool content coming, gameplay related as well, and all of our hobbying is just kind of getting us ready to get into those games and put our own personal touches on everything and have it look really cool, really compelling. Dive into that story, make everything super neat. All right, so once we get this decayed metal down, I do have the option. I can go back in and I can do some highlights. You could wash it. We're not going to go too crazy because we do want kind of the overall repaint to match what we have from out of the box. And so it's largely, like we talked about before, you're really just looking for a nice solid base coat, a little bit of shading, so a little shade wash. You can do oil washing if that's something that you've explored or are interested in getting into. It's a really great way to shade things like this that have a lot of really hard line panels and things, because that wash will just break right into it with no problem. That looks like we want it to be silver. Get the other side of this panel. Shoop. So I might do a little shade. I'm probably not going to shade wash these dark metallics. What I'll do instead is I'll just go in and do a little bit of zingy spot highlights, and we'll get going. It does look very Nautilus-y. Um, and let's see. Let's knock that in. And we want to come in here. So we'll come in, hit these. Be a little sloppy with that, I guess. That's okay. That's okay. This is not okay, though. We're going to clean that out. So we'll just kind of scrub that away. And if you found any of these areas too difficult to get to or not worth the trouble, you could just leave them and nobody would really notice, especially in these really deep recessed areas anyway. But I'm just going to go ahead and make my life a little more tricky and get all of it in there. Kind of slop that over. See if people are really trying to work John over for these Fury of the First Order spoilers. I don't know. He's a tough man, that John Schaefer. BK did a whole guessing game on yesterday's stream. I don't know if John has something similarly planned here. Okay, let's see. So I'm pretty happy with that. What's our time looking like? We can be bold and daring and try to do the other side. Let's do that. We'll flip this thing over. We'll just kind of move along. So I think we'll be okay. I do want to get to that glow, so even if we don't get to the silvers today, we can at least get to the glows. I'll make sure that we hit that. So I think that's one of the most useful and interesting techniques to learn for just kind of updating or taking those X-Wing ships out of the box to the next level is just taking a little bit of time, punching up the engine glow or canopy glow, like working on canopies. Those little bit of extra elements combined with how they already look right out of the package not only allows you to give a little bit of customization, but really adds that extra bit of life and excitement to them. And of course, make a little bit of a mistake, we'll just kind of blend that out. I'm not going to worry about it too much because we're going to go back in with our colors anyway, but just to make my life a little easier in the future, if we don't have any like super thick spills, kind of like that. Perfect. It gives you a little bit of a sense of like classic blending there too, wet blending on the Mini. A little bit like that. Knock this stuff in. This is really exciting. People are very interested in First Order. Looks like John did provide a little bit of an answer, so articles should be coming out this month, it looks like. And all the classic spoilers and reveals along with it. And I'm not too worried about those guns because we'll go back over them. Get in here to this. Knock this out. This little engine coil spinny thing where the drill bit's attached. Color that in. Just really quick. Thought about, for a little bit, I was thinking about maybe doing a complete repaint on this. Maybe doing like a blue instead of the orange or a purple. That purple and gold could be really fun. Do something really ostentatious. Kind of assume it's some kind of wild luxury, like rich criminal underlord, or maybe some really important separatist, maybe like Wat Tambor's personal trident. I don't know. Watt probably has a personal Trident, right? Lock that in. Over here. Lock these in. These little panels, I think those are going to look really nice. Nice. And I would also say, if you're on a time crunch or maybe you're just kind of like practicing, you can always think about what people will see. So these bottom squares and the bottom of the ship in general, like you're not going to see as much. So if you just left them dull or the normal color, I don't really think anybody would notice. But since we're here, let's just knock these out really quick. And you can also save yourself a little bit of time and headache if you pick colors that are good to work over the base color. So again, this dirty, like dingy gold color that I'm working with here is great because if I was going to really pick a base color that I wanted to paint it over, doing a really deep brown like we're painting over here would be my number one choice because it's going to allow the transparency of the paint, since no paint is perfectly opaque, to work well with that undertoning. Like I talked about, that just means fewer coats of paint that you have to apply to the Mini, which means less time spent on each color, which equates to seeing success a lot faster. And sometimes that is what it's all about. The other option here too is if I wasn't doing this on stream necessarily, or I was just doing it for myself, I might break out the airbrush and just do airbrushing on this, which would obviously on something very large like this, or like vehicles and stuff, it would definitely make the process go a lot quicker. However, I don't think a lot of people have access to an airbrush, and certainly not if you're just getting started in the hobby, you're not going to, and I think so. I always like to just try to do this stuff traditionally with the brush because you don't need an airbrush. It's a nice tool, but it's not required by any means. You can 100% do pretty much everything that you can with an airbrush with the brush. It just might take a little extra time. But that's okay. I realize that these tentacles are just perfectly positioned in a way that it's probably impossible to see everything I'm doing on the interior of this. But trust me, we're just adding more gold to these brown areas. And then I think we'll move on to our silvers. While these kind of set up and dry, we'll add a little bit of highlighting. Oh, whatever. We'll just come back and repaint over you. That'll help speed it up. Here, hit these. Come down, that, get it going. I have done a lot of oil washing and not specifically just on X-Wing stuff. But I really do like, and I think oil washing is great. I know John has showed a couple of, he did it on A-Wings that he repainted some time ago on stream. I used some oil washing on, I'm getting my head in the shot here. I did some oil washing on a unit of clone troopers that I did on stream for Legion. Oil washing is a great way to finish, again, anything that has a lot of really hard lines and a lot of panel lines and stuff. Honestly, if you wanted to, you could just take this Mini right out of the box, the Trident right out of the box, or really any X-Wing ship, but I think this one especially would benefit from it. Mix up a couple of different oil washes for the different areas, or maybe even just one like cohesive oil wash, and you could put it over this entire Mini and you would get some really great looking results that would just add to the depth and the overall look of the piece. and that would be really quick. But yeah, oil washing is a fantastic way to finish anything X-Wing related, like repaints and stuff like that. You can do flat colors, and especially because with most of the ships at the scale, the Trident kind of being um, the exception because it's a huge ship. But things like the Vulture droids or your X-Wings, your B-Wings, TIE fighters, all that stuff, you really just have to lay down a single like layer of base coat, and then once you've done that, you can do that oil wash, and the oil wash will take care of almost all the important stuff. It will add that depth. It will pull all those panel lines out really nice. It'll create that good separation and the different tones that you want. And of course, you have so much control with oil washes, and it's so easy to do panel lining and stuff because of how the cohesion and adhesion and the surface tension is. Excuse me, with how thin you can make those things, that it's a fantastic tool. There's a lot of great videos, I'm sure, that we'll be covering oil washing more in the future on different things. Like I said, I know John's already done it a couple of times on streams. So if you want to go check that out, go look for his A-Wing repaints that happened, I think, 2 months ago, maybe 2.5, something like that. But they're on YouTube, so you can go review how he did that. He kind of finished that off, and so there's plenty of stuff there. So, all right. So the paints being used right now, I'm using Decayed Metal from Scale 75 for Release the Budgies, who's asking. And now I'm going to move to this Negro Gold, and this is going to kind of be my highlight here. So just really quick, I'm going to grab a little bit of this. I'm just going to come in and do a really quick kind of highlight. I should grab my blendy brush so I can blend this stuff out a little bit. And so really all I'm doing here is I'm applying the color flat. I'm taking my second brush, which is a little damp, and I'm just using it to blend out the color and push it to the edges. And you could do this more of like a classic edge highlighting. So, if you wanted to take your time and be a little more careful, you could come in to the side and edge highlight. But I really like doing this 2-brush blending technique because you can get a nice, really smooth gradient, really quick and easy. So to do it, you just kind of go, make your line of paint, grab your blending brush, come in, and then pull it out and kind of stretch the paint out so you see how we get this nice little smooth gradient really quick. So it's a very nice, efficient way to get some smooth highlights pretty quickly. And another strength of having that blending brush, not only so you can fix your mistakes, but so you can do this technique as well. Just have to remember that you do have to clean both brushes as you move along. Ooh, let's see if we do it this way maybe. I'm just going to do it really quick. I'm not even going to bother blending this part. I'm just going to kind of overbrush it really quick. I don't think anyone will see it. Just come in here. I'm just going to hit the raised edges of the turbine. And because this is metallic, just little zings of color is enough to add to that impression of metallosity, as Dallas calls it. So the higher you go in your colors, like you could take this all the way up to a pure silver if you wanted to. But really, I'm just kind of looking to add a couple of little zings of highlights, which will help the eye really read this as metallic, but I don't want to lose that deep dark color. So it is about just kind of careful placement so that the light zings it and it hits. So, all right. Okay, so let's come over here and just really quick kind of drag the edge of the brush along those raised areas. Get that. Come in here. So all I'm really doing is I'm just trying to take the very edge of the brush instead of the point, so the flat of the brush, as it were. And I'm just letting it drag over the raised edges of these tentacles, which you probably can't see because I don't think that was on camera. Sorry. Such a big miniature. And then that is allowing me to really quickly do some very simple highlighting. And again, add to that metallosity feeling of this. And if I get a little too much on any of the portions, heads in the shot because we're so zoomed out. I'm not used to working this far zoomed out. I mean, heck, even the couple of Legion vehicles that I've painted for Mini Stravaganza and on stream weren't this big. My goodness. I know. This is the stream where I just complain a lot about how there's too much coolness. It's the worst. Paint the orange parts to look like wood. We could do that. I don't think we have the time for that today. And if I was going to do that, I probably would have had to redo the whole. Maybe not. I don't know. Not today. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that excuse. I don't have time today. Wooden Nautilus. I challenge Dallas to paint the wooden Nautilus. It is very steampunky, though. I agree. This. Get in that blend. Blend. Flip it over. Hopefully y'all out there can still see all this stuff. I'm doing my best. Trying to move a little quickly, but also make sure that we're still on camera all the time. And you could certainly do like a dry brush on this if you didn't want to do the two brush blending. You could just do like, again, you could just take a little bit more time and approach it like an edge highlight and just be very, very careful about going over the edges. You'd lose a little bit of that gradient in the center though. And that's where this two brush blending method really shines, is that you get those gradients that come across the whole section of the Mini. These, this, but you can also see how I'm kind of being a little artisty with it, a little sloppy, because we just want to get it knocked out and looking good. We can always go back and fix later too. All right, so add a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Get this around here. It's around here, and then I think we'll move on to our silver. So again, when it comes to like that interior, this section here, I'm just kind of like slapping a little paint on. I'm not being too precious with it because it's really in shadow. So I just want a little bit of that brighter metal, that Negro Gold. To give that little bit of light catching when it happens. Come over here. Get that just a little bit so you can see kind of where I'm going with that. These interior panels. This is definitely more of like an overbrush because these sections are a little more tricky to hit, and I don't think too many people will see them. So Hit those. So at this point, I'm just going to do like a really quick overbrush on these sections. So I'm going to go back to my edge highlight. Now we start making sound effects. So we're like so in the zone. Come back through and do just a little blending out of that. You can see right here. And then, let's see, how do I want to? Oh, stay on camera and still do it. It's contortioning time. So many things that I'd rather do here. All right, here we go. So again, this is just like an overbrush. I'm just really quickly coming in, very lightly running the brush over the areas that I want to catch up the paint. I think, are we good? Looks like we might be pretty good. Let's come in and do a quick overbrushing right here. Sorry, you keep seeing the side of my face. I'm not supposed to be the star of the show. It's supposed to be the miniature. It's all falling apart. Okay, this is looking pretty good. You can see how much quicker that stage goes because we're just doing like minimal highlights. That's all we need to do. Just want to get that little bit of sheen and glint in there. And if we're sloppy with it, that's okay, because we'll go back through maybe with a wash or whatever. All right, so we got that done. Now, let's go ahead and grab some black metal. Whoop. So we're going to use some black metal from scale, and we're going to start knocking out some silvers. I really like this black metal color. It's nice and grungy and grimy. And again, it will go pretty nicely over this gray. So I'm just going to hit all of the places like these little bendy bits that are currently just this flat kind of off gray color. I'm going to make those silver. And then with this, again, we'll grab probably a heavy metal or a thrash metal from scale, and we can just do a really quick highlighting on it. Like, let's say this little vent right here, just because we're getting crazy, we might say that we want that to be silver as well. Even though the assembly line paint job didn't cover it, I can cover it because this is mine. So knock that in. If you wanted to paint the CIS colors, I think, yeah, it would depend on, as Mr. Schaefer's asking right now, which CIS color scheme you're looking for, because they have a couple that you could mimic. I always think of Separatist Alliance ships as being the blue and the gray. Like the Malevolence, I think, was that color, and then, of course, a lot of the Armada ships that just released for the Separatists, I think, have the same blue-gray kind of tonality. Oof. Sorry if this is, like, not even noticeable. Getting in all those cracks and crevices, you know? Yeah, so we want to get in here. Knock this out. And honestly, I'm being a little more precious about this than I probably need to be for stream, because I could just go back and do all these areas that you can't actually see later. But we're like rocking and rolling, and I'm in the groove, so let's just keep going. all this. All right, here we go. So I would use for like CIS colors, I don't know what Schaefer would suggest, but if I was going to try to do episode 1 kind of like the blue and the gray separatist ship colors, I would definitely go with like a rainy gray from scale, which is a very nice start. You could find like more of a blue gray if you wanted to start like dark and then go to light. So you could start with maybe some kind of great coat or like a German gray, probably from a historical line. Like a Vallejo probably has like a German gray or something. A wolf gray, as it were. And then you could use that rainy gray and mix that in as your highlight and start building up your colors that way. I think that would get you really close. And then the blue, I think the blue is more like a navy color. So you'd want like a flat base blue, not like you want like a really bright sky blue or more like an ultramarine for like your basic artist color blue. Look outside in Seattle. That is not too incorrect. There's maybe a little too much yellow in the sky today. We don't have a lot of cloud cover, but yeah, you know, I think you're looking for that cool, you definitely want that cool, slightly blue neutral gray from memory. And I'm not looking at a reference, but that would be where I'd start, just based on my remembrance and like what I think of when I think of those colors. Mm-hmm. Oh, look at me. I can open these 2 little tentacles here to get a better access. That's kind of nice. Nailed it. Okay. Let's see here. So we got to come in, do these ones, this one. I just have to do these sides basically. The size 3 brush is working so well. It fits in like all these spots so nicely. Definitely working on projects like this though, you want a sizable brush. Like don't go in here with a size 1 or a size 0. You'll never get anything done. Not only do those brushes not hold paint, they don't hold a lot of paint. They're not going to cover a lot. And honestly, you know, they have their uses if you have to squeeze into a space where you just can't have the thickness of the barrel. But for the most part, as long as your brush has a really nice, oh, I'm totally off screen as I'm painting these guns, aren't I? Sorry. As long as your brush has a really nice point, you're going to be able to do all of the detail work with it as well. And it's just going to make everything super easy. So we just want to finish out these turrets. And then we can do a quick highlight on the silvers maybe. Maybe we just wash the silvers. We could do it either way. You could either shade the silver down if you want it to be a really dark, black, grungy kind of gunmetal. Oh, look at that. We missed these interior ones, so we'll knock those out really quick. I'm not going to worry about being perfect on those. Those really quick. Where'd my black metal go? I need a little bit more. Okay. Just for funsies. Nope. Let's flip it around here. Get in here. Get in here. I was thinking like we could do these panels metal, we could do these metal, but we've only got 20 minutes left. I want to get to those glows, so I'm not going to do that right now. But I think that would be really cool. Okay, I think we're pretty happy with that. I probably missed a couple of sections, but I'll go back through and clean it. Yeah, if you want to stipple, makeup or dry brush, makeup brushes are amazing. They're super cheap. They're really easy to find. and you don't really mind destroying them, which 100% will happen with those techniques as things go. So I also use the makeup brush on the Lat LE, which I painted on one of the stream's post mini extravaganza. So there's a couple of videos on YouTube for sure, kind of covering some techniques and ideas on how to utilize those approaches. And again, I really like that. Not only do you get really nice results, and as I talk about in the videos during the streams, you can, if you take your time and you go slow and do enough layers and kind of build your progressions up, I mean, there are people who can replicate almost perfectly the same kind of effect that you get from doing really good airbrushing with dry brushing and stippling, and it's pretty much just as easy and succinct. It might take a little bit of extra time, but it's not much, and it honestly is pretty amazing. And it's fun. You just get to sit there and stab the crap out of your mini. You're like, take this, miniature. Okay, so again, we're just going to kind of go through. I'm doing just a really quick overbrush. This is just to pick up some of those raised edges on where I put the silver. So you can see how that little bit of extra highlighting makes all the difference in the world when it comes to defining the shape and the different volumes in the miniature. Like you're helping the eye really pick out everything that's there. It's just at a smaller scale. So a lot of what we're trying to do here is give that separation between dark and light, push everything that's dark behind, push everything forward by making it lighter. Again, this is one of those things where, like, do you really need to do it on the interior that nobody's going to see? Probably not. But this guy's so big. And this isn't too taxing of a technique, this little overbrushing, because we get to be pretty messy with it. I'm not being precious with it. Again, you know, if you wanted to, you could spend all the time in the world and make it glorious and perfect, and that would be awesome. But at the scale with what we're doing here today, we can be fast and flow and be quick and get some really cool end results anyway. Like I totally missed this section, but you can't even really tell when I put the highlight on it because those colors are so close. And this is another reason why we're choosing these areas for these colors. Now the top of the ship especially, and I talk about this a lot when we're doing like X-Wing repaints, you got to think about what's the area of the ship that you're going to see the most of, and it's almost always going to be from player perspective. So anything that's the top, you want to spend a little extra time on or think about a little bit more, and anything that's on the bottom of the ship, you can kind of just fudge and not worry about as much because no one's going to really look at the bottom of the ship. Between the base and how you play with it on the table and all of that, it's pretty well hidden. So if you're trying to maximize your time and your effort, think about the top. Think about this view, like right here, right? This is how you're going to see the ship almost all the time on the table. Okay, we have like 15 minutes left. So switch that out. Let's go to our glows. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to grab some of this Madruk yellow, and I'm going to go back over all of the yellow canopies with it. I might mix in just a little bit of, might use a little bit of this high key yellow as well, just to get like something that's nice and solidly coverage, because primary yellows aren't going to cover super well. So I could also grab some kind of yellow ochre, anything like that. I don't want to go too far with it, but I want to make sure that what I'm going to paint on there is going to cover pretty well. So you can always use kind of a lighter color as well to make sure things go. But our goal here is to just punch up this area. And we did have a little bit of overslop. So where we did, just kind of fix that. And that's why you want that ochre in there, because that ochre is going to help the yellow cover. If you just try to cover up, now if you had been really clean, if I had been really clean, let's blame the person who did it, me. If I'd been a lot more careful and cleaner in this step, I probably could just go through and worry about doing the yellow normal. But you can see here how we do need to cover up a little bit of that overslop because I wasn't perfectly careful. And this might take a couple of coats to do. Might not. Just kind of depends on the paint and what you're using. But goal here is to just kind of like build out this foundational yellow. You can see how we're already punching up that color. So that base color was like fairly, I'd have to shift brushes here if I wanted to really do that. So we might just for demonstration purposes worry about this one and then go from there. So we'll kind of just blot that in, let it dry, and then we'll come back and we'll build that out just a little bit more with yellow. You're going to see how we're getting a more richness here for our yellows. Another way to do this would be like how I'm going to approach. So how I'm going to approach these little blue dots on the edges here. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to grab some Arctic white, which is not a perfectly pure white. And I'm going to figure out how best to show this. Maybe this way. This way looks like the best. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in and everywhere where I want those blue dots to be, I'm going to slap in some of that white. And off-white, if you're going to do glows, a really quick and great way to do it is to just base coat it in this off-white color. And you can come back through with your inks and your highlight colors. For instance, if you have access to fluorescents, those can work really well over this white. The scale fluoros are pretty fun. But you can also just do it with a regular ink wash. And then a little bit of white mixed into your ink wash for highlighting purposes. You can do the old school gem kind of effect where you start really dark and you build up the color through successive like smaller and smaller highlights. That takes forever though. And this technique is actually quite quick. I might change my mind and just go back because the nice thing about this off-white is that it does have really good coverage even over colors that are darker than it. Okay, so now we have that row of these, and then you do the same thing again. Come back to this row, which hopefully you can see. Just gonna slop those in. Slop those in. And any kind of like excess spill that you get will just sort of make a poor man's OSL, I guess you could call it. So don't be afraid to kind of go over. So we do that. I'm going to come back over here. And I am actually going to change my mind, because sometimes that happens. I'm just going to work this white in here, and we're going to come back through and we'll start from a base coat of white, I think, just to make it really punchy and glowy. Ooh, got a little extra string here. And you don't have to be too precious because we're just going to go back to yellow, but this will provide a bit of a nicer. This will provide a much better glow base than the other way. There we go. All right. So come back and hopefully that white is dry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab cyan ink tints because we're going to just mimic the blue glow that was back there. We're just going to make it better. So with inks, you don't want to use them straight out of the bottle. You do want to cut them with stuff. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to use some of this Vallejo Glaze medium, which is just it's a nice medium. It's designed obviously to do glazing, which means that it's really looking to do transparencies and stuff, and that's kind of what we want here. And then I'm going to mix it with a fair amount of water, so I want it to flow pretty well. And then the simplest, like step one, take your wash, and then just kind of like run it over and let it pool into those recesses, and you can already see how that white underneath in its very basic form helps mimic the light source a little bit because it'll run off of the top of the bubble, leaving it to be the hot spot. That will run into the crevices and the cracks where the darker color would be forming up. You do have a decent amount of working time on this, so one of them isn't quite working the way you want, you can come back in. You can kind of pull color off if you need to as well. And of course, the way that the inks work is, again, if you are a little messy with this step, it's okay, because it's just going to wind up looking like some quick OSL effects if the ink spills over on the other colors by it, because it's only going to tint, it's not going to overpaint. Let me get back on camera here. So you could stop at this stage if you wanted to and just say, oh, that looks good enough. It's definitely punchier and more bright than what we got out of the box. And this is same trick on engine glows here. So choose any color. For the most part, use white as an off-white as your underbase. And then just come through with your inks. Kind of knock them out. I'm going to do this a little thicker because I do want to go back through and highlight up. So I'm come over here, make sure that we're on camera so you can see what's going on. Slop that ink right on there, let it pool around. This will take a little bit of time to dry. And if you get too much ink, like I just did there, you can always just go back through with your damp brush and sop a little bit of it up. If you find that the paint isn't sticking properly, you probably use too much water. So you can either add a little bit more ink, you can add more extender, and that's where the mediums really come in. So obviously, using too much water will cause the paint to really not adhere well to the mini, but that extender is the same stuff that the paint is mixed with in the first place. So even though the glaze medium will really thin out the paint and make it stretch and run, it doesn't do so at the cost of its ability to adhere to the surface that you want it to paint on. So another really important reason as to why you might want medium. In your arsenal of tools, okay, so now we've done that. You can see as this dries, it kind of pulls away. So now what we're going to do really simply, so I'm going to grab some of my blue ink. I'm going to mix it in with my off-white that I used. You don't have to do it this way. You can obviously just use paint, but I like to use the ink and the white paint just because then I know that my colors are going to match, like they're going to highlight naturally. And I'll just go through and start dotting in where the hot spot would be, and it's really easy to tell in these lights. So I'm just coming in and doing a quick little dot right in the center. As you can see here. Just dot those in, dot those in. And ideally you do want to wait until it's dry for this step, but we only have so much time together and I want to just show you the whole process. So do a little bit of a wet blend here. Then mix in more white, and you can do kind of like gradations as much as you want. And then you just come back in, do another dot, do another dot, dot. So you can see how we're getting a really nice mimicry of light here. That works. And the last step, you can go all the way to really easy dot of white. And of course you could skip any of the middle steps and just go to the dot of white, but I like having that little bit of transition as I do this. So you can see how we have this really cool little glow effect here. And again, same thing, same technique if you want to do it for engine glow or anything like that. You just apply it in different ways. So for example, the Lamba Shuttle or the Millennium Falcon, which has a long strip, instead of doing the dots, you would just, strip in and let it go that way. Okay, we're going to grab Inktense Yellow now. Move over to that cockpit. Same kind of overall idea here. We're just going to grab our yellow ink. I'm going to come in, we're going to layer that in. All the places we want to be yellow, and of course we do this over each of these little glowing bubbles. And that would require a smaller brush for the interiors because those get pretty small. Even the point on this size 3 probably isn't enough to do that. Now we could change this canopy color to whatever we wanted, of course. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to grab a little bit of white with my yellow ink. Come in. And just think about like where my hot spots are. So we think like the center, and then maybe we do overness here. And this is, because of how wet this is kind of becoming like more like a wet blend with the ink. It's already on there. That's okay. Keeping it kind of smooth. Grab a little bit more white. And hitting that center dot. Yeah. And the last step that you could do, especially on this yellow, go back through, and once everything's dry, hit it with a glaze of that yellow ink one more time. And that would tie everything back together really nice and smooth. So once this is dry, just go back in, and what I would do is I'd grab that yellow ochre, and I don't think this will work right now because everything's super wet, but I will just demonstrate, even though it probably won't work out. So grab, ooh, no, just go ahead and stab your table with your paint. Grab some of that yellow ochre, and then just kind of come in here and dark line right along where those edges are, like that, and then you can blend that little edge out. So you get a nice framing of the window, and that will, of course, help everything look really nice. And defined, because that definition is going to be your friend. Same thing here. If we slopped over yellow, we just come in, and it's just going to be a little bit of cleanup stages, especially on this canopy. This canopy is probably going to be the most intensive part of what we've done so far, because you really need good separation between the yellow and the metal. And the more you work on that, the better it's going to look, and the more convincing the effect. So there we go. There's still, of course, plenty of work. We have a whole nother side. It's such a big miniature. It's super cool, really fun to work on, but we've taken it from out of the box factory colors to kind of a more unique state. So we changed a lot of the dark browns into this dark crunchy gold. We did our silvers for all our little flanges and stuff and our guns, or blaster cannons, excuse me. We did some really quick and fun glow effects for the little glowing nodules on the tentacles. And then, of course, we worked on the canopy a little bit to make it much more punchy and a little more defined and fun. So just amping up all of the colors, still maintaining that super awesome orange and gray that comes out of the box. So with that, let's switch this camera over. Ooh, maybe. I am. All right, so thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you had fun. I hope you're inspired. I hope you're excited to get your hands on this amazing Trident miniature for X-Wing. And hopefully, as you look at your X-Wing ships, you think about how you could dive in and do some customization of your own. So that said, thank you again for joining me. Be sure to be back tomorrow. Dallas Kemp will be on at 1 p.m. Pacific for some more painting action, and then join John Schaefer on Friday as he dives in. I don't know if he's doing the Trident game plan Friday or if he's going to be painting some stuff to get ready for it. I think he said in the chat that he's going to be playing on Friday. So if you want to see the solo game mode, that'll be this Friday with John. And if for whatever reason that gets rescheduled, we're going to do that this month. Otherwise, be sure to check out all of our social media. Stay up to date on all the latest and greatest information. Thank you so much for joining me in my London. I can't say it very well. My laundry/hobby dungeon. And we will see you on the next one. Till then, stay good to each other, be beautiful, and goodbye.